hit that subscribe button and the bell icon beside it to check out our latest videos before anyone else. Hi there guys, I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech and this is the camera comparison between OPPO F7 and the Redmi Note 5 Pro. By the way, this video is being recorded on the OPPO F7. Audio is from the phone itself, so do check out the noise cancellation offered by the phone. Now with that said, let's check out the camera specs of both the phones. On the rear, Redmi Note 5 Pro sports a dual camera setup with a 12 megapixel primary camera with Sony IMX486 sensor with f2.2 aperture and a 5 megapixel secondary camera from Samsung with f2.0 aperture used exclusively for depth sensing. On the front, it has a 20 megapixel camera with Sony IMX376 sensor with f2.2 aperture. On the rear, OPPO F7 sports a single 16 megapixel camera with f1.8 aperture. On the front, it has a 25 megapixel camera with Sony IMX576 sensor with f2.0 aperture. These are some sample pictures taken in daylight and well-lit conditions. OPPO F7 supports Auto HDR and all these pictures were taken in Auto HDR mode. Redmi doesn't support Auto HDR for the rear camera, so these pictures are taken with HDR on. With HDR on, capturing speeds are slow on Redmi, it takes like a second to capture the shot. On OPPO, capturing speeds are very fast. On OPPO, images look very pleasing. Colors pop out a lot, but they don't look natural. Colors are to the warmer side, images are a bit overexposed to make them look bright, so it will lose some details. In HDR mode, images from Redmi look dull, but they carry good amount of details. If you can hold your hand steady, you can get pretty sharp images. Dynamic range is really good on OPPO and it is just okay on Redmi. On the whole, for HDR images, I would prefer OPPO, especially for the capturing speeds. Now these are some pictures taken without HDR mode on Redmi and with Auto HDR on OPPO. Without HDR, capturing speeds are fast on Redmi, colors look more natural, but because of the lack of Auto HDR, images look a bit dull. Sky is completely overexposed. While on OPPO, images have good dynamic range, colors pop a lot and look more pleasing. While taking macro shots, I didn't have any issues with focusing on both phones. You get good bokeh effect on both phones. So on the whole, I would pick OPPO F7 as the winner because of Auto HDR and the capturing speeds. Yes, images don't look natural, colors pop out a lot, but they look very pleasing. If you're a photography enthusiast, you might like the images from Redmi. Now coming to portrait mode, both phones offer portrait mode. Redmi uses the dual camera setup and because of that, edge detection is much better than OPPO. OPPO uses a single camera and some software processing, so edge detection isn't as good as Redmi. Now if you don't zoom into the images, portrait shots from OPPO also look pretty good. Now coming to the portrait shots, sometimes portrait shots from Redmi look better and sometimes images from OPPO look better. So for this round, you can pick the best one based on your preference. Now coming to low light performance, even in low lighting conditions, capturing speeds on OPPO are much faster than Redmi. Redmi takes like a second to capture the shot and then probably sharpen it, but still, images from Redmi have some visible digital noise, which is not present on OPPO. Images from both phones are soft, but comparatively, images from OPPO are slightly more sharper. So in low lighting conditions, I'll pick OPPO F7 as the winner. Now coming to selfies, both phones come with a single camera on the front with a wide angle lens. So you can take wide angle selfies on both phones. Both phones also support Auto HDR for the front facing camera, but it doesn't work properly on Redmi. Most of the images taken with Auto HDR or the HDR mode come out to be faded and overexposed. While on OPPO, images shot with Auto HDR are much cleaner with better skin tones, better color reproduction and a pretty good dynamic range. Just look at the sky and the clouds on both phones. While taking pictures in HDR mode, capturing speeds are much faster on OPPO. It takes like half a second, while on Redmi, it takes like a second to capture the shot and still doesn't produce good results. So for selfies, OPPO F7 is definitely the winner. Now coming to portrait selfies, once again both phones offer this feature and both use a single camera and some software processing. Edge detection isn't perfect on both phones, but better than the rear cameras. Now coming to the portrait selfies themselves, once again they look better on the OPPO F7. By the way, on the F7, we can also use Auto HDR while taking portrait selfies and portrait shots, while on Redmi, we can't do that. So even in terms of dynamic range, OPPO F7 has an advantage. So once again, even for portrait selfies, OPPO F7 is the winner. Now these are some selfies taken in low light indoor conditions. Both do a pretty good job, but comparatively, I like the selfies from OPPO. Now these are some selfies taken in low light outdoor conditions. In very low lighting conditions, OPPO uses the display as flash and Redmi has a dedicated soft light. So these are the results we get. Once again, all these pictures were taken with auto HDR on, and comparatively, this time selfies from Redmi look much better. In low lighting conditions, disable auto HDR or the HDR mode itself for better results. Now coming to video recording, here's the sample footage from the rear cameras. So guys, this is the footage recorded using the rear camera of the OPPO F7 and the Redmi Note 5 Pro. On the left side I have the OPPO F7 and on the right side I have the Redmi Note 5 Pro, and I'm currently recording this video at 1080p resolution. That's the maximum resolution supported by both phones. We can record video on both phones at a maximum of 1080p resolution. There's no 4K video recording option on both phones, but Redmi offers electronic image stabilization, which OPPO doesn't. So the footage on Redmi is slightly cropped, but it is way more stable than OPPO. In terms of footage quality, I like the footage from OPPO, but just because of the stabilization, I would pick Redmi Note 5 Pro as the winner. Now this is the footage from the front-facing camera. So guys, this is the footage recorded using the front-facing camera of the OPPO F7 and the Redmi Note 5 Pro. On the left side I have the OPPO F7 and on the right side I have the Redmi Note 5 Pro. And I'm currently recording this video at 1080p resolution. That's the maximum resolution supported by both the phones. And as you can see, footage on Redmi is more stable. That's because it offers stabilization even for the front-facing camera. Well, it doesn't seem all that much, but it still offers stabilization, while the Vivo doesn't. So this is the sample footage, and as you can see, when there is a bright background, subject on Redmi becomes completely dark, which is not a case with the OPPO, and that's one of the best things or worst things about the Redmi Note 5 Pro. So let's continue checking out the footage. Once again, both phones can only record at a maximum of 1080p resolution. Redmi offers stabilization and OPPO doesn't. But unlike the rear camera, stabilization on the front camera isn't all that good, as if it isn't present at all. Now coming to the footage quality, both phones overexpose the footage to make you look fair and bright, but comparatively, exposure control is much better on OPPO. So for front camera video recording, I'll pick OPPO F7 as the winner. So guys, to conclude, cameras on OPPO F7 are definitely better than Redmi Note 5 Pro. Now with that said, Redmi Note 5 Pro has an edge when it comes to portrait shots and video recording. Both are important, but not as important as the rest of the aspects. So on the whole, OPPO F7 is definitely the winner. So guys, looking at the sample pictures and the sample footage, what's your take on the cameras on these phones? Do let me know by commenting below this video, and if you want us to make any specific video, tweet out to us with hashtag AskGreedyTech on Twitter and we will try to make it as soon as possible. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to see more cool videos on tech. I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech signing off. Have a nice day.